That's what we're doing in our country. That's what the president said. We're going to have a more efficient, more effective government. We're going to downsize. And you can go back and look at that January 20th speech if you don't believe me. Here's some of the Nazi weapons laws. They're really just translated. This book actually shows the translations of the laws from German to English. So we're just following suit. What we failed to learn from history, we're destined to repeat the same thing. I'm sure that's going to happen to us. It happened here, the two guys are talking about, but it's unconstitutional to allow this to happen. We can't take the guns away. And Brzezinski over here, or Brezhnev on the right, says, well, it worked for us. And it did work for them, and it's worked every place they've taken the guns away. They've been able to go in and just bring the people into slavery in a matter of hours. It might take as long as a day, but it's a very short period of time is all it takes. They have this Hegelian, I talked about the dialectic Hegelian principle. You create a problem, then you generate opposition to the problem. You have fear, hysteria, then you offer a solution to the problem. They lose the freedom, they pass the laws. Well, right here, Ruby Ridge, I don't know how many of you read that article. I again spent a couple hours weeping over what happened to this man. All he needed was, they set him up basically. This was all in the court trial, but he was set up. He didn't appear in court the same day. The HURT team came in. They surrounded his house. They built a road up to his house. It was just he and his family. They caused a commotion outside. The boy, a 13-year-old boy, and the man that lived with him went outside, and they shot the boy in the back. Then they shot the mother through the forehead as they were going back in the cabin. None of these people have been found guilty of anything. They were American citizens, never tried in a court of law. What they did do is what bothered me. We used to do the same thing in the military. We get on the megaphones and we started harassing them. About 5 days after Vicki was dead, they started asking her asking the kids that were in there what Vicki was going to eat for breakfast. Was going to fix the kids for breakfast. That's our federal government that did that. And the man that did it was named Larry Potts, or he didn't necessarily make those quotes. He was the head of that operation, the one in Waco too. He got promoted, by the way, to Assistant Secretary of FBI, or Assistant of the FBI under Free. Then they demoted him, so he's a training officer for the FBI. So there can be a whole lot of Larry Pottses all over this country. How foolish are we to think that's a demotion? Here's what happened. I don't know anything about Branch Davidian. I don't know a whole lot about David Koresh. I know he had some weird beliefs. He was trying to write scrolls and things. He thought Jesus Christ was coming back, and he believed in the Bible according to him literally, and he thought the end was here. So we sent in some CS gas. CS gas was outlawed by the UN treaty 6 months prior to this. CS gas is nothing more than a powdery gas. We used to put down the tunnels over in Nam, and then you lit the gas and it exploded. It's a very explosive type gas, plus it kills the children. We wouldn't even use this gas. We can't use it per law in federal prisons in case of riots, but yet we chose to use it at this place when these people have never found guilty of anything in a court of law. Notice how the place was burned down and bulldozed and all the evidence got rid of. See what they do? They take a group, they identify the group, they isolate the group, they vilify the group. They did David Koresh there, and then they pass laws to obstruct the group, then they enforce those laws. Well, to show you how they did the militia after this Oklahoma bombing, they said a guy named Timothy McVeigh, one man, and there have been 50 witnesses have said they've seen a John Doe number 2. They won't put him on the grand jury. There was no fertilizer or substance floating around in the air after this bombing. The same thing happened at the Trade Center in New York. It was supposedly a fertilizer bomb right next to an I-beam. It didn't even blow the beam up. This here sheared it off at the ground level in an uniform way. You can see some of I could just go on and on this thing. I could spend an hour telling you all the different inconsistencies about this. That's not what I want to tell you. I want to show you how the press dealt with this. There was militia hysteria right after this. They said bombing militia, bombing militia, bombing militia. They were interviewing militia. It took about 4 weeks for the whole American public to turn against the militia, to become afraid of the militia after this thing. Look on the right-hand side when they're silent. This man was the Unabomber. Very few people knew that the Unabomber was a environmentalist. He had Albert Gore's book in his cabin, well used. 2 of the men that were bombed, one of them was the head of the Forest Service of the Forest Association of California that was bombed. He attended Earth First meetings, and some of these men were on their hit list. So they have their own ways of not telling us what they want to tell us and causing this hysteria and fear. in the other areas. They immediately went after the militia and other groups. They didn't just hit the militia. They said bombing, militia. Then Schumer said, I want a congressional on the pro-life people. I want to see if they're involved in the bombing. So they started saying bombing Christian, bombing militia, militia Christian. They started tying it all together. They really did the militia in well. The next group they're going to go after are the Christians, I can guarantee you, because he says these people are purveyors of hate. We can't have that kind of speech, President Clinton said. Well, one more thing on the militia. They passed this Joint Resolution 206. Basically what Joint Resolution 206 says, they can do whatever they want to take out anybody that has arms, and they can use the greatest dispatch possible. So it's legal to take in any way to take the militia units out now, passed by this congressional Joint Resolution 206 that was passed. And that was passed just overnight. It didn't take long. Why did the bombing happen? The bombing happened this came out, again, I said the Lord pops these things off. I was reading in Norms, and I picked this out about the 8th page of the Register 2 days after the bombing. It said anti-terrorism bill now on fast track. You can see right here that the anti-terrorism bill, it would not have passed had that bombing not taken place. The anti-terrorism bill is one of the most... I called a friend. I said, what's this all about? He says, it's one of the most evil bills ever passed. You can be arrested for intent. If you're standing outside of a bank, they can arrest you that you were planning on robbing that bank. You're guilty until you prove yourself innocent. You go before a kangaroo judge. That's one judge instead of you don't have a trial by jury. They don't have to submit evidence. They can basically arrest anybody they want, put them in jail, and they will have no means to defend themselves, nor will they have the people to defend them. They didn't get enough passed after the Oklahoma bombing, so we saw this jet explode. There's like 150 people or 50 people that saw this rocket going up. They said that was a toy rocket. They won't interview them. The NSTA, or the National Safety and Traffic Board, was not allowed to look at the evidence. It was all done by the FBI. The FBI is the only one that gathered up the evidence, sort of like controlled evidence. Well, what they did after this here was Clinton again urged broader terrorism laws. He wanted to get a hold of the wiretapping laws and some of these powder laws, so they can control really the smokeless powder, black powder. That's so they can control ammunition. They can know who has ammunition any place. When you buy it, you have to register for it as well as you have to register for guns. Is this Hegelian principle working? I believe so. Here it says in the LA Times, it says the majority of Americans are willing to give up some civil liberties in order to fight terrorism, according to a Los Angeles Times poll. So they're ready. The fears set in. They don't care about civil liberties. That isn't what's important to them. Who are they going to go after next? Well, right here he talks about, Clinton says, citing terrorism, political, and religious extremists. Get ready, religious extremists is the next one. What's a religious extremist? We'll find that out in just a minute. Here he says the greatest threat to the United States interest is the extremist groups claiming to act on behalf of religion, especially, then it just goes into that. It says it would also ban raising or transmitting funds in organizations that the president designates as terrorists. Now, he can do this. He can designate any group terrorist, whatever it may be, and whose activities threaten the U.S. national security, foreign policy. So if you've supported, like I've supported, the James Dobson program, James Dobson is obviously a pro-life person. Now, if somebody comes and shoots somebody that's a doctor, abortion doctor, the president can determine all pro-lifers terrorists. At that point, he can deem anybody that's contributed to a group of pro-life terrorists. That's what that says, and that's what the anti-terrorism bill was all about. That's what passed 1 year after the blowing up of that Oklahoma building. What is a dangerous terrorist? One who takes the Bible literally. Remember what David Koresh was doing? One who is preoccupied with the second coming of Christ. One who homeschools his or her children. One who stockpiles food over 3 months. One who spanks his own children. Here's hate crimes. They tried to pass this bill at the end of the 104th Congress. Now, I'm sure they'll get it passed this time. Many times it comes under the Love and Peace Act. You have no idea what it is. They passed 3 or 4 coming in different ways. It's hard to stop, but I'm sure they'll get this hate crimes bill passed. It won't be called that, but it's criticizing the government or disagreeing with the President of the United States in any way. Same thing Hitler. You could not disagree with the Fuhrer in any way, or you were taken off to one of the camps. A poll recently was taken, and the question was asked of the three groups in America, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and fundamental Bible-believing Christians, which is the most dangerous? The majority answered fundamental Bible-believing Christians. Well, let me tell you what, I'm a fundamental Bible-believing Christian.